At 62, Laura had learned how to disappear in plain sight. She wasn't invisible, not really. People still saw her. They smiled politely. They held doors. They asked how she was doing. But no one saw the woman she used to be, and most days neither did she. She remembered a time when her body felt like an ally instead of a negotiation. When she climbed stairs without thinking about her knees. When she lifted groceries without bracing herself first. When mirrors were just mirrors, not quiet reminders of years gone by. Life had happened in sensible stages. Marriage, children, work, responsibility. Somewhere along the way, caring for herself slipped lower on the list. Not out of neglect, but necessity. There was always someone else who needed more. Now the children were grown, the calendar was quieter, and yet something inside her felt louder than ever. It wasn't vanity, it wasn't about weight, it was about recognition. There were mornings she sat on the edge of the bed, stretching stiff fingers, listening to the house settle into silence. She would catch her reflection in the dresser mirror, softened edges, silver threaded through her hair, and feel an ache she couldn't quite name. She wasn't unhappy, but she wasn't fully here either. Laura used to be strong, not just physically, though she remembered that too, but strong in the way she trusted herself. Strong in the way she moved through the world without apologizing for taking up space. Somewhere along the way, she had started shrinking, crossing her arms, choosing the back row, letting years tell her what was no longer meant for her. That's for younger women, she'd think. That ship has sailed. And yet, there it was. The quiet, persistent thought that refused to go away. What if it hasn't? The idea embarrassed her at first. She pushed it aside like an impractical dream, but it returned in small moments. While folding laundry, while scrolling past fitness videos she pretended not to watch, while passing the gym she used to belong to years ago. She remembered the smell of rubber mats, the rhythm of movement, the way strength once made her feel capable, anchored. She hadn't stepped inside a gym in decades. Her body felt older now, slower, softer. She knew that. She felt it every morning. And still, the thought lingered. Not loud, not demanding, just patient. She wondered when she had decided there was an expiration date on trying. No one had told her she was too old. No sign had been posted. No rule had been announced. She had simply absorbed the message the way women do, quietly, over time. But lately, that message felt thinner, less convincing. She wasn't chasing youth. She didn't want to compete. She just wanted to feel present again, awake in her own body. She wanted to meet herself where she was now, not where she used to be. That evening, Laura stood in her closet longer than necessary. She pulled out an old gym bag from the back shelf. The zipper stuck for a moment before giving way. Inside were memories, a pair of worn sneakers, a water bottle she hadn't used in years, the faint smell of effort. Her chest tightened. She wasn't making a promise. She wasn't committing to anything yet. She was just looking. But as she stood there, holding that bag, she felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Not confidence, not certainty, just willingness. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. No one noticed when Laura made the decision. There was no announcement, no conversation, no moment that looked important from the outside. It happened quietly, the way most meaningful things do. She sat at the kitchen table the next morning, coffee cooling in her mug, staring at nothing in particular. Sunlight crept across the floor, catching dust in the air. The house was still. Too still. Her gym bag rested against the wall, exactly where she'd left it the night before. She told herself she didn't have to go. There were 100 reasonable excuses ready and waiting. Her back felt tight. Her knee twinged when she stood up. She could start next week, or next month, or not at all. At her age, no one would blame her. That was the problem. She imagined walking through the gym doors, the music, the mirrors, the younger bodies moving easily, confidently. She imagined the glances, real or imagined, and felt her shoulders tense. What am I even doing? She thought. I don't belong there anymore. The fear wasn't about failing, it was about being seen trying. Trying meant hope, and hope meant risk. She wrapped her hands around her mug and took a slow breath. Her heart beat a little faster, as if her body already knew what her mind was still arguing against. This wasn't about getting her old body back. That body was gone. And that was okay. This was about claiming the one she had now. Laura stood, rinsed her cup, and moved through the house deliberately, as if any sudden motion might break her resolve. She pulled on comfortable clothes, not stylish, not new, just familiar. Safe. In the bathroom mirror, she paused. For a moment, she considered changing her mind. She could put the bag away, close the closet door, pretend this morning had been no different from any other. Instead, she met her own eyes. I'm just going to show up, she whispered. That was all. No expectations, no goals, just presence. The drive to the gym felt longer than it was. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every red light offered an opportunity to turn around. Every mile tested her resolve. When the building finally came into view, her stomach dropped. The parking lot was fuller than she'd hoped. She sat in her car with the engine running, watching people come and go. Some moved with purpose, others laughed. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going. She felt like an intruder in her own life. Her foot hovered over the brake. She could leave now, no one would know, no one would be disappointed, except her. Laura turned off the engine. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was also final. She stepped out of the car, the cool air brushing her arms, and walked toward the entrance. Each step felt deliberate, courageous in its own quiet way. Inside, the doors slid open. Sound rushed in. Music, movement, life. Her heart pounded as she crossed the threshold. She hadn't lifted a weight, she hadn't stretched, she hadn't even signed in yet. But she had done the hardest part. She had chosen herself. The air inside the gym smelled like rubber mats and disinfectant, with an undercurrent of something metallic effort, maybe. Laura noticed it immediately, the way you notice a place you once knew but haven't visited in a long time. It felt louder than she remembered. Music thumped from overhead speakers. Machines hummed. Weights clinked and dropped. Conversations overlapped and faded. Everywhere she looked, bodies were in motion. Stretching, lifting, running, each person absorbed in their own rhythm. She suddenly became aware of herself in a way that made her chest tighten. Her posture, her clothes, the softness of her arms, the way her steps felt careful, measured. She resisted the urge to fold in on herself, to cross her arms or look at the floor. Just breathe, she told herself. No one was staring. Or, if they were, they moved on quickly, just as she did when she glanced at others. The truth settled in slowly and awkwardly. Everyone was busy being themselves. Laura approached the front desk, her voice quieter than usual as she checked in. The young woman behind the counter smiled without hesitation, without curiosity. It was an ordinary exchange. So ordinary it almost disappointed her. She had braced for judgment. None came. On the gym floor, Laura hesitated. So many machines. So many choices. She felt the familiar pull of indecision, the fear of choosing wrong, of looking foolish, of not remembering how things worked. She decided to start where no one could measure her. The treadmill. She climbed on carefully, gripping the rails as she set the speed lower than she once would have. The belt began to move, and with it, her breath. One step, then another. Her body protested at first. Tight calves, a slight ache in her hips. But beneath the discomfort was something else. Recognition. As if her muscles were surprised, but not offended. Oh, they seemed to say. We're doing this again. She watched her reflection in the glass ahead. Not critically, just curiously. This was her now. Older, softer, still standing. After 5 minutes, her breathing deepened. After 10, she felt warmth spread through her body, sweat gathered at her temples. She stopped before exhaustion set in, before pride could turn into punishment. That felt important. Next came the weights. Just a few just enough. She chose light dumbbells, lighter than she used to lift, and sat on a bench near the wall. Her movements were cautious but intentional. She remembered the form, the slow lift, the controlled release. Her arms trembled. She almost laughed. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't Instagram-worthy. But it was real. Between sets, she noticed something unexpected. No one cared. The man nearby focused on his reps. A woman across the room adjusted her headphones. A trainer laughed with a client. The world went on, uninterested in measuring her worth. And with that realization came relief. Laura wasn't being evaluated. She was participating. After 20 minutes, she stopped, not because she had to, but because she could. She wiped down the bench, returned the weights, and stood still for a moment, letting her heartbeat slow. Her body felt heavy and alive. In the locker room, she caught her reflection again. Her face was flushed, her hair slightly damp. There was effort written across her skin. She smiled. Just a little. It wasn't pride she felt. It was permission. As she walked back to her car, gym bag lighter on her shoulder, Laura realized something important. She didn't dread coming back. That surprised her most of all. The soreness arrived the next morning like an uninvited guest. Laura felt it the moment she swung her legs out of bed. A deep, persistent ache settled into her muscles, her arms, her thighs, places she hadn't asked to be reminded of their age. She stood slowly, testing her balance, waiting for the stiffness to ease. It didn't. She winced as she reached for her robe, laughed softly at herself as she shuffled toward the kitchen. The part of her that had always been practical spoke up first. "See," it said, "this is exactly why you don't need to be doing this." Her knee complained on the stairs. Her shoulders felt tight. The idea of going back to the gym felt suddenly unrealistic, almost foolish. It would be so easy to stop now. She had already done the brave thing. She had shown up once. That could be enough. A quiet victory she didn't have to repeat. As the day unfolded, the excuses lined up neatly. The weather, the errands, the simple fact that rest felt kinder than effort. Laura noticed something then, not just the discomfort in her body, but the familiar pull to retreat. She had felt this before in other parts of her life. That moment when continuing meant discomfort and stopping meant safety. Quitting didn't feel like failure. It felt like relief. That evening, she sat on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, rubbing her sore arm absently. The gym bag waited by the door, just as it had the day before. She stared at it longer than she meant to. It wasn't the gym she was afraid of anymore. It was disappointment. Disappointment if she couldn't keep going. Disappointment if she tried and didn't change. Disappointment if hope turned out to be heavier than she could carry. Laura closed her eyes and let herself be honest. She wasn't afraid of being weak. She was afraid of discovering she had waited too long. The thought settled in her chest, heavy and quiet. Then another thought followed, gentler but persistent. What if stopping hurts more? She thought of how she had felt leaving the gym that first day. The warmth in her body, the unexpected lightness, the way she had stood a little taller walking to her car. She hadn't felt that in a long time. Laura stood, moving carefully, and picked up the gym bag. Her muscles protested. Her mind argued. She didn't negotiate with either. "This isn't about proving anything," she said aloud, her voice steady but soft. "It's about staying." The second workout was harder, not physically, but emotionally. She moved slower, lifted less, walked instead of jogged, but she showed up, and that mattered more than numbers ever could. Driving home later, she felt tired in a satisfying way. The soreness had shifted, still present but no longer threatening. It felt earned now. That night, as she stretched gently before bed, Laura realized she had crossed an invisible line. This wasn't a phase, it was a practice. And for the first time, quitting no longer felt safer than continuing. The changes didn't announce themselves. There was no sudden surge of energy, no dramatic transformation, no moment where Laura caught her reflection and gasped. If she hadn't been paying attention, She might have missed them altogether. But something was shifting. She noticed it first in the mornings. Standing up from the bed took less effort. The stiffness faded faster. Her body still spoke, but its voice had softened. At the gym, Laura stopped measuring herself against memory. She no longer compared today's strength to the woman she once was. Instead, she began listening to the woman she was becoming. She warmed up longer, rested without guilt, chose weights that challenged her without punishing her. What once felt like compromise now felt like wisdom. There was strength in that. She learned the rhythm of her body again, when to push, when to pause. The gym stopped feeling like a test and started feeling like a conversation. Some days, the progress was so subtle, it felt imaginary, until it didn't. One afternoon, Laura carried groceries in from the car and realized she hadn't braced herself first. Another day, she climbed a flight of stairs and reached the top without thinking about her knees. She laughed aloud when she noticed. These weren't victories anyone else would applaud, but they mattered. The mirrors at the gym no longer felt like enemies. She didn't seek them out, but she didn't avoid them either. When her eyes met her reflection, there was less judgment, more curiosity. Her body still bore the marks of time. That hadn't changed. What had changed was the way she stood inside it. Laura began to feel present again, in her movements, in her breath, in the simple awareness of muscles engaging and releasing. Strength, she realized, wasn't loud. It was steady. She also noticed a shift beyond the gym. She spoke with more certainty, took up space in conversations, said no without apology, yes without explanation. Her confidence wasn't flashy. It was rooted. There were still days she felt tired, still days she questioned herself, still moments when old doubts surfaced. But now they didn't have the final word. One morning, as she finished her workout and wiped down the bench, a woman nearby smiled at her, just a quick passing smile, but it felt like recognition. Laura smiled back. Belonging, she realized, wasn't about fitting in, it was about staying, and she was staying. It happened on an ordinary day. No milestone, no personal record, no reason for it to matter more than any other morning. And yet, Laura would remember it long after. She stood in front of the mirror in the locker room, towel draped loosely over her shoulders. The room hummed with quiet activity, lockers opening and closing, footsteps passing behind her, but she felt oddly still. She looked at herself. Really looked, not the quick glance she used to give, cataloging flaws before turning away. This time she stayed. Her eyes moved slowly, deliberately, as if meeting someone new. Her body was not younger. The lines were still there, the softness, the marks of time that no amount of effort could erase. And yet, something about the reflection felt different. She recognized herself. Her shoulders sat back naturally now. Her stance was balanced, grounded. There was color in her face, a calm alertness in her eyes. This body had carried her through decades of living, of loving, of loss, of persistence, and here it was, still showing up. Laura felt a swell of emotion rise in her chest, unexpected and tender. She pressed her lips together, steadying her breath. For years, she had treated her body like a problem to solve, something to fix, to shrink, to correct. Now she saw it as a partner. "I'm listening," she whispered. The words surprised her, but they felt true. This wasn't about conquering her body. It was about cooperating with it, respecting its limits without surrendering to them, asking more, not in punishment, but in trust. Laura realized then that the gym had never been the point. It was the space where she had learned to stay present with herself again, where effort met compassion, where age wasn't an obstacle but a context. She wasn't trying to become someone else. She was becoming more fully herself. Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't rush to wipe them away. She let them come, let them go. There was nothing to hide from. As she turned from the mirror, she felt lighter, not because anything had been taken away, but because something had been released. Shame. She walked out of the locker room with a quiet confidence, not the kind that announces itself, the kind that settles in your bones. And she knew, without doubt, that this was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of a different way of living inside it. If you're listening to this, Laura wants you to know something. She isn't special. She didn't start strong. She didn't feel brave. She didn't wake up one day filled with motivation and certainty. Most mornings, she still didn't. What she had was a moment of willingness. Just one. If you're waiting to feel ready, you may be waiting a long time. Ready is a myth we tell ourselves to stay comfortable. Laura didn't feel ready when she walked into the gym. She felt awkward, exposed, unsure. She went anyway. If you're thinking it's too late, because of your age, your body, your past, she understands. She thought that too. She believed there was an expiration date on trying. There isn't. There is only today. And what you choose to do with it. Laura didn't reclaim her youth. She reclaimed her presence. She learned that strength doesn't shout. It whispers. It shows up quietly, consistently, and without apology. Some days, strength looks like lifting a weight. Other days, it looks like resting. And some days, it looks like walking through a door you've been avoiding. Yet you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to compare yourself to anyone else. You don't have to become a different person to begin. You only have to stay. Stay with the discomfort. Stay with the effort. Stay with yourself long enough to remember who you are. Your body is not the enemy. It is the place where your life is happening. If you've been shrinking, pulling back, waiting, telling yourself later, consider this your invitation. Not to chase youth, not to erase time, but to participate in your life again. It's not too late. Not to move, not to begin, not to choose yourself. Laura is still going. And if you want to, you can too.